Have you ever felt like your doctor doesn't have the full picture? Well, you're probably right, but it's not their fault. Right now, clinicians are practically drowning in a sea of fragmented data. Lab results from one system, specialist notes from another, making it almost impossible to see what's really going on. In this explainer, we're diving into some fascinating new research on how AI could become a doctor's most powerful assistant, turning all that data chaos into life-saving clarity.
So just to put this problem into perspective, look at this number, over 500. That's how many minutes, we're talking more than a full workday, a pharmacist or doctor can spend just preparing for one single patient's complex medication review. They are manually hunting for clues, piecing together a patient's entire medical history, just to make sure their prescriptions are safe. It's a huge time sink and an absolutely exhausting mental marathon.
Now, what if we could shrink that 8-hour marathon into a 2-minute sprint? It sounds kind of like science fiction, right? But a new study is exploring an AI-assisted tool that promises to do exactly that. And let's be super clear, the goal isn't to replace the doctor. The goal is to give them a superpower, the ability to see a patient's story clearly and instantly. Let's take a look at how it works.
Okay, so to really get the solution, we first need to understand the problem. It's something called the polypharmacy puzzle. And honestly, it's a problem born from a huge medical success. People are living longer. But that often means living with multiple chronic conditions, and each one is managed with its own set of medications.
The clinical term for this is complex polypharmacy. And we're not just talking about taking a few pills here and there. This is when patients are on 10 or more different prescribed medications. You can imagine, with every new drug that gets added to the mix, the risk of a dangerous interaction or bad side effect, it doesn't just add up, it multiplies. It gets complicated fast.
All of this leads to what the researchers are calling a data debt crisis. See, doctors have more information on us than ever before, but it's all trapped in these separate digital silos. Electronic health records over here, hospital letters over there, lab reports somewhere else. So the problem isn't a lack of data, it's that there's a disconnected flood of it, and it's basically impossible for one human being to piece it all together under pressure.
So how do we deal with this risk right now? Well, the main tool we have is a process called a structured medication review, or an SMR. But as we're about to see, this absolutely critical safety check is a manual marathon for even the most brilliant clinicians. So, what is an SMR? It's a really important safety check. It's basically a deep dive where a clinician, usually a pharmacist or a GP, sits down with a patient to go over every single medication they're taking. The goal is simple, but it's vital. Optimize their treatment, get rid of any unnecessary drugs, and prevent avoidable harm.
And here's the kicker. This whole process is incredibly inefficient. Those hours we talked about, they're spent hunting through different systems, trying to connect a diagnosis from 5 years ago with a prescription that was written last week. This isn't just time-consuming. It's mentally draining work that pulls doctors away from what they should be doing, actually caring for patients.
So, how does this new research propose to fix this mess? Well, let's meet the AI-augmented assistant. The study zeroes in on a tool called DynaRx, and it's designed to be a powerful co-pilot for clinicians, not some kind of autopilot.
The DynaRx tool is really built on 3 main pillars. First, it automatically identifies and flags patients who are most at risk of harm from their medications. Second, it can run simulations to predict what might happen if you change a dose or stop a drug. And third, and this is the part that really got the clinicians in the study excited, it visualizes the entire patient journey on one single timeline. You can just feel the excitement in this quote from one of the pharmacists in the study. She said, "I've been dreaming about the timeline you showed." For the people who are actually on the front lines doing this work, this wasn't just some nice-to-have feature. It was a total game changer. Because you know what? Clinicians don't just need data, they need to see the patient's story.
And this right here shows you exactly why that's so powerful. Instead of a jumbled mess of disconnected notes, the tool creates this single, interactive timeline. You can instantly see when a condition was diagnosed, when a drug was started, when a dose changed, and how their lab results reacted. It turns hours of detective work into a clear, immediate snapshot. It's all right there.
But here's the thing. The most powerful technology in the world is completely useless if the experts who have to use it don't trust it. And this brings us to what might be the single most important part of this research, the human factor. The study was crystal clear on this. Clinicians really prefer explainable AI. They completely reject the idea of black box models that just spit out an answer with no explanation. To trust the recommendation, they need to be able to see the AI's work, the specific data points it looked at, and the logic it used to arrive at its conclusion.
This quote from another pharmacist just hits the nail on the head.
They have to understand the why behind what the AI is suggesting, because at the end of the day, the clinical responsibility is theirs. The AI is an advisor, a really smart one, but it's not the final decision maker. That transparency is the absolute bedrock of trust.
And you know, building trust also means respecting a clinician's focus. The participants were very clear. The absolute last thing they need is another system just bombarding them with pop-ups. This alert fatigue is a huge problem with a lot of current technology. Any insight from an AI has to be targeted, relevant, and actionable. It needs to be a clear signal, not just more noise.
So all of this is building towards a pretty amazing goal, creating a digital safety net that makes sure no patient and no critical task ever falls through the cracks of our fragmented system.
One doctor in the study used a programming term that describes this perfectly: round tripping. All it means is closing a feedback loop. So when a doctor orders a test or makes a referral, the system should track that task until it's actually complete. Right now, these loops are often left open, creating these dangerous gaps where mistakes can happen.
The potential impact here is just enormous. A manual system that relies on sticky notes and human memory is always going to be prone to error. But an AI-augmented workflow that automates this round tripping, well, that could create a much, much more reliable system, making sure critical follow-ups are never, ever missed.
And this value is not lost on clinicians. As one doctor put it, a tool that just ties up those loose ends would be worth its weight in gold. See, this isn't about flashy, futuristic technology. It's about solving a really fundamental, high-stakes communication problem that puts patients at risk every single day.
So, where does all this leave us? Well, it points to a future where medicine is a true human-AI partnership. A future where the AI isn't the doctor, but it's the ultimate clinical assistant, the one that handles all the data drudgery, visualizes the patient's story, and builds that reliable safety net. And that frees up our clinicians to focus on what they do best: applying their wisdom, showing compassion, and making that final crucial call for the person sitting right in front of them.